Guys, welcome to today's Elite Coaching Call. Today, the topic I'm going to cover is around building a media buying team. So I've been involved in media buying teams way before Facebook was a thing, and kind of through Google ads and other kind of marketing setups as well. And then like my experience was always from client side. And then from there into, how to see that from an agency point of view, and, running my own products, my own e-commerce as well. And there's a few things I think I can share with you on what we've learned along the way. So for those of you that are live on this Elite Call, if you've got questions around, how to construct a team, then fire them in the comments and I'll try and cover off as many as I can. But I want to give you kind of my reflection on from an agency point of view, how I see the team development and how we set up. We've tried different models and which ones I think are better, which ones have worked for us. There's always going to be like other ways you can cut and slice your teams and kind of make things work. And especially like there's two particular things I want to reflect on actually. So one is on the agency side, but then also when we were scaling up that e-commerce back in 2014, 2015, and I grew a performance marketing team, I think of about 16 or 17 people. That's probably the best setup I've seen and I've had, where we had everything available within the team. And I'll show you what that means as well, because when you're buying media, when you're doing performance marketing, you can't do it alone. You can be a full stack marketer, which I am. I can do dev, design, the technical, the creative and stuff like that. But it's a very hard skill set to develop. I've had almost a couple of decades to get this right. And without that, you've got a choice to make. And this is where I kind of get, where I find the biggest challenge when it comes to recruiting is, do you go after someone that has the full stack, but then you're probably going to have to reprogram parts of that stack? Or do you get specialists? So creative specialist, data specialist, tech specialist, etc. And it's, there's going to be a different solution based on where you are with your business and then where your business is going as well. So for example, let's say you're someone like Naveen who's doing Ecom and looking to grow and hopefully take over the world with amazing Ecom products. Or if you're someone else like Alex building your agency and looking to serve others, there's going to be different pieces that you're going to have to put together to get the best out of your efficiencies. And what I mean by that is, as a business owner, as a team lead, you're going to be looking at cost, profit, the headcount cost and things like that. And the way we kind of have traditionally looked at it in the agency is that you're looking at what your kind of costs are at the client level as well as at the agency level. So, if you've got 10 clients and let's say you've got 10 clients, but you've got 5 resources. So give or take roughly, 2 clients per resource. Not that all 5 are media buyers. It could be 3 media buyers, a junior, a designer or something. Then you're using percentages of that time allocated against the client. And I'll kind of map that out as well and just show you some of the insights as to kind of how we explore utilization of resource and cost of resource. The same happens on client side as well. So, when you've got your end of month profit, whatever it is, you then have to decide, right, if I'm a lone ranger, let's say, for example, I've grown my e-commerce store to 50K a month revenue and I'm making 10K a month profit. Do I want to pocket all of that 10K? Great, then I just carry on running everything myself. But at some stage, and the same thing happens when you go from freelance to agency, is you need to make that decision. Do I reduce the amount I'm pocketing, or do I carry that on and just bulk up my own profits? Because you're balancing your income as a freelancer, as an e-com store owner, for example, versus the time you're having to put in. So in 2017, when I started my agency, it was just the two of us, myself and my biz partner, running all the ad accounts. And, at that time, I was literally, just working all the hours just to make sure that I could deliver the results. But, if I look at things back then and kind of how things progressed from that. So if we go back to, let's just make sure this pen's working. So if we go back to 2017 for SMC as an agency, we had 2 resources. So there was DM, which is me, and then you had SM, which is my business partner. Now, at that time, I think before we got our first hire, we probably had about 5 clients. So, we've got 5 clients. That between one person is completely manageable. And when you've got 2 people, it's okay. Now, This applies for any kind of business owner. Like I've been asked this question a few times, and it's like, as you're growing your business, what's the first hire that you make? For me, as a business owner, forget being an employee and kind of working for someone else. As a business owner, my first hire for SM Commerce, and probably one of the mistakes I made with my first business back in 2012, and why I kind of suffered and didn't do too well in that business, is I didn't make this hire. So the first hire was a personal assistant. Now, obviously, what does this have to do with media buying and stuff like that? If you imagine you've got 5 clients and you work out on a daily basis, weekly basis, how much time does it take you to send reports, to communicate, to sign contracts, to file? I did this analysis back then, and I figured out that I could save about an hour a day. So 5 hours a week, 20 hours a month. That's valuable for me. Like, if you look at my per hour cost, that's directly attributed to the bottom line. I can do more things. And then over time, the PA collected more and more tasks, and it meant that I could be a lot more efficient. So then you look at things like onboarding clients, you look at things like employee contracts, getting sent out, HRE stuff, all that kind of stuff. So the PA enabled me to focus a lot more on the clients. Now, if you look at the client side, the regular tasks that you're doing, as an agency that's running client campaigns, you're looking at the whatever platform you're running on. You're looking at Ads Manager, Google Ads, Facebook Ads, whatever it is. You're looking at your stats and things like that. One of the first wins for us was to pull the data out into spreadsheets and make fast decisions from that. So, before I even looked at making my first hire, I was working on efficiencies. Now, some people will go and hire, and that's absolutely fine. I'm telling you this from my perspective as essentially what's called a full stack marketer. So going back some 20 odd years ago, I was a developer, I was a bit of a hacker, I was good with data and stuff like that. And my first role into marketing was conversion rate optimization. So landing page analytics, insights, and things like that. So my first move in the agency was, how can I reduce the time it takes me to find the answer to the questions I have? So the questions which I would have, and I remember the first client we had in the UK, a company called Perkbox. We were running spends of about 10K a day for them at the time. And one of the things I wanted to know was, where can I trim the low performing ads? So we created a quick report. We just started by taking the data out of Facebook and then eventually moved into Supermetrics. But the first thing was, I'm always looking at how can I reduce my time to make more time. So you can either make time by hiring someone, or you can make time by being more efficient. Now, I think Naveen will relate, because I know your background's slightly similar as well. My first port of call is efficiency. So can I use technology? Can I use data to create more efficiency? It's why I love Supermetrics. It's why I love tools like RevealBot and things like that, because hiring is probably, and I say this from working in many, many businesses, hiring is the hardest thing to do to grow a business. Getting the right people, the right mindset, the right focus, the right care and attention. There's just so many things that can go wrong with hiring. And I've had my fair share of hires that have gone wrong. And, on the flip side, if you get really good hires, it could really elevate your business. But with efficiencies and with tech, once you get things in place, tech doesn't need time off. Tech doesn't have issues at home and stuff like that. So the first thing I'm looking for is efficiencies. Now, when I first made my hire, I hate Ads Manager. I hate going into Ads Manager. I just find it cumbersome and slow and frustrating. So my thing was, how do I focus on what I'm good at and what I enjoy, which is strategy and planning and things like that? How do I first remove the things I don't enjoy? So, if you stack up the things and you just make a list, number 1, number 2, number 3, what are the things that you dislike? And you can kind of come back and DSLIKE, let's turn that into a K. So what are the things I really, really dislike? And then we can come back to prioritize those. So for example, number 1 for me is just uploading creatives, creating ads and stuff like that. So what I did before I hired was to create a process where we would be able to brief something like this in a spreadsheet and say, right, this needs to be set up. Here are the parameters. It's a website conversion campaign, these audiences, these ads, etc., etc. What else didn't I enjoy? Doing weekly reporting, etc., etc. So I then started to mark those out. So not only am I step by step removing the things that I feel are not the best use of my time or energy, but also inefficient for me to run. Because bear in mind, with the two of us running the agency at this point, we were essentially not that far off just being freelancers. We wanted to remove the things, or I wanted to remove the things that I was not enjoying, but also this was starting to build my job spec. So then I turn those dislikes around, and if I say uploading, this is really slow to write, uploading to ads manager, that now becomes one of the bullet points for my hire, which is a junior Facebook ads media buyer. Task number 1, upload to ads manager. Task number 2, weekly reporting. Task number 3, chasing clients for assets. And now all of a sudden, this was explained to me actually in one of my employee roles, probably about 10, 12 years ago, but it still kind of rings true today in the kind of way I see things as well. You only have 100% of capacity. So whatever you're doing in a day, in a week, etc., you've got there's 0%, so that means you've got nothing to do. There's 100% capacity here. Now, every time you're hitting that 100% capacity, so let's say right now you're completely maxed out. You're working all the hours in the day, plus you're checking in weekends, etc., etc. How do you reduce the capacity down? So if you're going to be at your most efficient, you will keep your capacity at the 80 to 90% level. Obviously, if it's lower, it's better, but you don't want to be too low because you need to keep yourself active. But on the flip side, what I would say is, and actually I had a conversation with a friend last week. He says that he doesn't work more than 3 hours a day, and that's his rule. So his 100% capacity is 3 hours. For you, it could be more, it could be less, but that's your capacity. So even for him, if he's at 100% capacity, it's dangerous, because whether you're working in-house or your own brand or an agency, you are always going to have fires and unpredictable things that are going to happen, right? So you have to leave some spare capacity for the unknown. Maybe you've got a child and that child has to go to the doctors like I had last week, or you've got a problem in the business, or you've got a problem with a supplier or a client. You need some spare capacity for those what if scenarios. So my goal is to keep myself at the 80 to 90 range. Now, if I start to hit 100, and I've had this recently as well, I'm now looking at that and saying, right, what do I need to change? Something here needs to change, because you don't want to burn out. You don't want to end up in a situation where you're working all the hours, because what ends up happening, and I've been in this situation as well, you hit 100% capacity and you're completely maxed out. And bear in mind, how do you create extra capacity? If this guy here wants to do more than 100%, he absolutely can. He could do 150%, but now he's working 4.5 hours a day. You're sacrificing something. And I did exactly the same. When I started off my agency, I wanted to do 6-7 hours a day, and that was my target in terms of capacity. Reality, I was hitting like 12-13 hours, and as crazy as it sounds, it was intense, especially when you're new to a type of business. And back in 2017, I hadn't run an agency before. I'd worked with lots of agencies as clients, and I had friends that run agencies, but doing it yourself for the first time, that was really difficult. And essentially my way of increasing capacity was to add more time to it. And then I got to a point where I said, look, this can't continue. I'm suffering, the clients will suffer, our revenue will suffer, and this whole thing will collapse. So then I look at that and say, right, how do I get rid of some of this? So going back to the, going back up here, first hire was a PA. Second hire was a junior ads media buyer, and FYI, he became one of our top media buyers within years. But I'm looking at this and saying, right, where can I reduce capacity? It could be reducing the number of projects, which is a task I actually took on recently, which was, it felt like we had too many projects going on. And as a business owner, you have so much responsibility to make sure that the path that you've mapped is achievable. It's great to say, I'm going to scale my agency to 10 million and things are going to be great. But if you have chaos all the way to that 10 million, you're going to burn clients, you're going to burn your team, you're going to burn yourself. You might have some nice revenue at the end of it, but maybe you've lost your sanity as well. So it's just constantly looking at, right, if I'm getting close to capacity and I don't want to commit more time, what do I need to do to actually remove some of that time? So, once we'd got to a position where I'd been able to bring in a junior, well, guess what? We can then bring in more clients and do that confidently. Then it was a case of, well, actually, yeah, this is fine, but I think that, my partner at the time and myself, we were doing account management. So then we went back through this dislikes thing and saying, right, daily account management, daily updates to clients, managing Slack, sending the weekly reports, etc. So then we said, right, all right, I think we need an account manager. So then we kind of grew the team based on that. And I'll show the kind of mappings of how we set up our teams and things like that. But I want to show you the process because, again, it's going to be different for different people as to kind of how fast you're growing and what kind of things you're leading into. But this is our kind of journey. But really the important part here is deciding what your capacity is. If you look at Tim Ferriss, 4-hour work week, and a lot of people do take it literally, like, I'm just going to work 4 hours a week. A lot of it is about process and automations and things like that. But that has to be defined on what's realistic for you. Now, if you're looking to grow your business to 10 million plus a year, and you want a 4-hour work week, and you're at ground zero, then that's going to take you longer. I'm not saying it's impossible. It'll probably take you a long time to get there. If you want to put all the effort in now, and in 12 months' time go down to your 4-hour work week, that's absolutely fine as well. But that has to be within your capacity. For example, right now, I every Thursday, and this is something I've had in place for the last year, every Thursday I'm not available. My team know I'm not available. Obviously there's some caveats, but generally Thursday I'm not available. That's my day to work on personal projects, my content, my own products, my own ideas and stuff like that. So my agency, my training team, everyone knows I'm generally not contactable unless it's an emergency. That I've created to separate myself out from those kind of fires and other things that come up, but also to kind of keep my capacity at a good level. So I know on a Thursday, I'm not going to deal with any fires that come up. My business partner or someone else will, but I put those barriers in place. And productivity is a whole different discussion that I'm not going to kind of veer into right now. But the key thing here, again, is just being aware of what is your personal capacity and your commitment. If you have a family like I have, for example, I generally work between 10 and 5. I switch off between 5 and 8. So that's my family time. And then after 8, I'll catch up with some tasks and things like that. That's my daily routine. That works for me. When I was an employee, I'd be out of the house at 7:30 in the morning. I'd be back at 7:30 in the evening. That was my employee life, and I didn't enjoy it, but I had to do it. That's the only thing I knew. So, as you start to grow your business, you start to learn so many different things about yourself, how you best operate. I best operate with my exercise time in the morning, so I start a bit later, and that's absolutely fine. Other people, we have a lady in our team, she starts at 5 in the morning. That's great, that's her work pattern. Everyone's different. So just finding your rhythm and stuff as a business owner helps you to find out how you can be at your best, and you can build your team and your systems around that as well. So, now that we've got this out of the way, I want to kind of talk a bit about kind of team setup and what the different models that we've created as well. So if I actually start off with in-house team, and I'll write this out, and for you guys in Elite, I'll share this with you guys after the call has been uploaded as well. So, if you look at the different roles, if I look at the way we kind of built up our team at that time, so my role at the time was head of performance marketing. So it was in fact, just to simplify, it's a head of paid ads. That's pretty much it. So anything paid would go through my team. We were doing Facebook, Google, Pinterest, we were doing LinkedIn and Twitter at the time. This is 2014, 2015. So my role was I was hands-on. It was just myself at the time. And then we hired a media buyer, and her responsibility was to manage Facebook. So that would allow me to take a step back from doing all the day-to-day and have someone that I could train up and oversee. This person here, now bear in mind, I was in an e-commerce business, and at this point we were scaling up. I think that year we're on track to hit 8 million from 800K the year before. So it was super stressful. The way I split this up was that this media buyer was responsible for what I call BAU. BAU means business as usual. So that was like, if the way I spun this up was, if we'd launched into a particular country, let's say we're live in UK, Germany, US and Canada, The media buyer would take that over. I would go and test new markets, so Germany, France, Spain, Netherlands, Italy, etc., etc. Build up the process, build up the SOPs, the account, etc., and then pass it over to the media buyer. And then at that point, we started to expand out, and we were using borrowed design time. So we had a design team here, and we had a creative designer. So at the time, we had probably about 20% of his time. So when he had time, he would create us some banners. We also had a writer and probably had 20% of his time as well. So that's the kind of the team that we had. We had someone running the media, someone creating statics and some videos, and then a writer. But as we started to grow out, we needed to expand and bring more resources in. We then hired 2 more media buyers. So we had 2 times media buyer here. Now the problem with this was, as we were scaling up our e-commerce, we were hitting more markets. Well, guess what? We need more assets. We're doing more testing. We need more copy. This for us became a massive blocker. So at this point, we started to take on more and more time. That team started to recruit as well. So let's say 40% and 30% like this. And then we started to bring in, I think, what did we have at peak? So we had, I think it was 6 media buyers at this stage. And now bear in mind, this was Facebook, Pinterest, Google. We had affiliate marketing, partnerships as well. So we had 6 media buyers. We then brought in a campaign manager, and I'll talk about that one as well. So the way that I kind of split this team up was, and I'm just going to delete that out. So we had a performance marketing team of 6 media buyers and 1 campaign manager, but then we actually incorporated a design team into performance marketing. So with this, we had 2 times creative designers, and we had 2 times copywriters. But then we also needed more insights and data, and we brought in a project manager, and we had 2 times, and I'm just going to put 50% developers. Now, back in 2015, when we kind of were first building on the Facebook API, we were doing everything in-house. So we would build these dashboards on APIs. We had alerts going into Slack when opportunities were there to scale or pulse ads. We built our own platform. So things that you look at now, for example, like Magix, like Adespresso, Smartly, and some of the other tools out there, we were doing this all in-house. And I had a little project team developing this. We had our 6 media buyers, campaign manager, and creative team. And we were able to scale up our spends. And I've talked about this a few times. I've said, we've scaled up to 200k pounds a day in spend. And people say, oh, that's insane. It must be crazy. We had a team behind it. This is the team we had behind it. Plus, we had borrowed resource from the CRO team, CRO, conversion rate optimization. So they'll be doing split tests, landing page builds, insights. And we also had a person in BI, which is business insights. We were looking, what was the name of the tool? I can't remember. It wasn't Look. We brought in Looker after, but there's another tool. And we had, I'm going to move this here. So this is the performance marketing team, which I managed, and plus we had additional resource for, which were managing ad spends of about 4 or 5 million a month at peak, and helped to generate huge returns off the back of that. But that was done by stacking on. And in the same process I gave you here, I would take on responsibility as the lead, test things out and bring people in, and where we needed to, then start to hire out. So, as someone who's bolting on the different parts that are needed, we didn't at that point need this anymore. So that went down to 0, and that went down to 0. Now, one of the cool things we did with the design team is we had fortnightly sprints. And I know for some people it's bi-monthly. In the UK, we call it fortnightly, which is every 2 weeks. So every 2 weeks, we'd have a design sprint. The idea was we had team 1, which was creative designer plus writer. And the same for team 2. And the reason I'm kind of sharing this, I know a lot of you are on the agency side, but this is from a client's point of view, because this is where my bulk of my real kind of big experience came on how to create processes in flow. So this one, for example, they would be doing week 1, week 3 sprints. They would do week 2 and week 4. Now, what would happen is literally every single week, my team would receive new angles, new creative ideas, new ads, basically to push out based on this kind of cycling of the team. Now, the team itself had 2 weeks to produce. So this is the interesting part about it, is that because we had 2 teams cycling where these guys were presenting in week 1, we would split that meeting and say, from our perspective, here's the ads that you gave us, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, whenever ago. We've run them. Here are the results. This worked, this didn't. So we're building up their experience. They would also come to that meeting prepared with the insights from the previous meeting and say, hey, here's some new creatives we created. Some of them would just be simple iterations of really good angles. Some of them would be brand new angles. So that was the kind of cadence we had in place, so that every single week we'd have a design meeting, review the previous performance, look at new creatives, and that would feed back into the media buyers testing process. So what we call graduation testing now, it didn't have that name back in 2015, but we'd go and cycle that back in so that we'd always be able to come up with, so we never had the situation where we said, frequency is too high and audiences are saturated, we don't have enough creatives. We always had creatives in place. And whether you are on the agency side or in-house, if you are serious about scaling up and growing, that's absolutely something you need to make sure you've got in place as well. So that's just an insight on the in-house team. Now, when I kind of took that into agency, we had, I'll put DM up here as, in fact, I'll just put I've always kind of seen myself as head of client strategy. Now, as a business owner that's either freelancing or agency management, you've got many hats that you're going to wear initially. My main hat on the client side was head of client strategy. And what we ended up doing was we had a junior media buyer, and then we hired the account manager. I can't remember if that's the exact order. And then we had a senior media buyer. And what we found was, as a core team, this actually gave us pretty much everything we needed for a main account. Now, if you look at the typical allocation per client, if a senior media buyer can manage 5 accounts roughly, then 20% of that time is per client. The account manager is probably 5%. There's not much for them to do. And then maybe it's like 10% of their time. So now when you look at this, the model that we created on the media buying side pretty much looked like this. So the idea was that we would create hubs of teams like this. Now, as you start to build these hubs out, let's say we've got 5 clients. So this here, the senior media buyer, and this is the same senior media buyer, has 5 clients and spending roughly 20% across each client. It will change based on what's happening. Then you have an account manager spending 5% of their time across the accounts, 25% of their time overall. Then you've got a junior that's spending 10% of their time across their different accounts, 50% of the time. Now let's say that we need to hire a new senior manager, senior media buyer. Now this person can now take on 5 new clients. You can still run the same junior media buyer because, hey, 50% of the time is supporting senior media buyer. Let's just call this person number 1, so it's just clearer to see. And therefore this person is number 2. So the kind of setup of the team is then based on the main person responsible for those accounts. So my role, and I this is part of the reason why we didn't expand into 50 and 100 different clients, is I enjoyed working on strategy. I needed a senior media buyer on the daily execution, overseeing the account and working off my plans, an account manager to communicate between clients and keep everything coordinated, and a junior media buyer to do exactly the things that I disliked, that I know other media buyers disliked as well, so that the senior media buyer can work at their best. So you don't want to you don't want to get someone senior into business that's uploading ads and doing things that are slowing them down. You essentially need someone to be a runner. So in a film production, the runners are the ones that will just go and collect things, do things and stuff like that, that the producer or director or someone who's leading a production doesn't want to be doing. So in this case, you could have one junior media buyer across two seniors. You can have one account manager supporting two seniors. In this scenario, you could have 10 clients managed by two senior media buyers, one junior and one account manager, just as an example. Now, obviously, these allocations will differ and depend on how you've set up your processes internally, but that's the kind of process that we started to set up. When we started to outsource our creatives. So we hired external copywriters. So copywriting was one of the first things that we outsourced, and then creatives. So at this point, if I kind of list out the different types of responsibilities and what we did with each. So if the core of our buying teams were based on this kind of hub basis, copywriters outsourced and kind of per hour or per article billing. Our creatives were pretty much same, and data insights, I ran this internally, so I would do all the data insights. I'd set up all our supermetrics. I'd do all the dashboarding and reporting and make sure that we had the right data at the right time, and we're able to make sense of our processes so that we can kind of give the core teams as many answers as we could. So, if you go into an account every morning, and we're rebuilding this right now on our own data platform, but I want to be able to go and look at that data, not in Ads Manager, but outside of Ads Manager, and have preset answers. So for example, right now, we're enhancing our data to pulling Shopify, Google Analytics, and Facebook and Google and things like that. So we can answer questions like, what does the attribution look like? What's the actual number of sales versus the actual number of the revenue money spent, for example. But this gives us a core team to be able to manage clients effectively as well. Now, some of you will look at this and say, well, media buyers can have 6 or 7 or 8 clients. That's going to be your call on how good your processes are, how much time your clients need. I know some agencies push up to 10 or more clients per media buyer, but if you're running local ads, for example, for local businesses, you could easily have 20 to 25, maybe even more clients per media buyer, because the amount of work is not that much. If you have an e-commerce client, the work is that much bigger. If you have lead gen, it's somewhere in between as well. So this is based on our model and just some kind of rough numbers here. Now, in terms of copywriting, we then decided, so I'm a copywriter, so we then made that internal, and I enjoy doing this. Plus some clients also do this as well. So this is generally our model right now. For this, we use NLC, No Limit Creators, right now. But the idea here is to outsource video and creative production so that we could create a briefing and process system so that we can kind of just make sure that we know what our, what kind of creatives work for different platforms and different things like that, and then be able to copy and paste briefs and creatives and things like that. So we could kind of outsource. Data and insights was previously always internal. And then we kind of brought in supermetrics and combined that in with other data points. And now we're building out a new data platform. But essentially, if your senior media buyers, if your media buyer and your media buying team are going to be successful, at least for us, the core has been to support with junior resource, to be your runner, to support with account management. So one of the questions that comes up is, why can't the senior media buyer, or why can't the media buyer also be the client communicator? For me, they require different skill sets. We've explored that in the past, but media buyers often get really busy and caught up in the day-to-day. But B, a really good account manager is a really good relationship manager. They're people, and what I mean by that is they're really good at communicating and understanding, building rapport and empathy and all those kind of things. The thing that they're really specialized to do, and this is a really important point, is if I just put role and KPI, their role is retention and revenue growth. Or let's turn this around as client revenue growth. So retention, and I'll put in there lifetime value. So as a agency owner, Your account manager, their key role is to retain clients, therefore grow your lifetime value and maybe even your monthly fees as well. And then to help grow client revenue, how do they do that? By supporting this team. Then if you look at your, I'll put senior media buyer here, their KPI is, I guess, fairly similar, but it's slightly the other way around. So client revenue growth is their first one. But then I would say, depending on the format and model that you're moving, is around monthly agency billing. So the goal here is, depending on how you're building your remuneration, it could be fixed monthly fee, it could be percent of revenue, profit, etc. That media buyer is responsible for helping your agency to grow their revenue, because if you're getting client results and the clients are happy, you're spending more or you're making more revenue and you're getting a cut of that, then your agency grows as well. For the junior media buyer, I'll just put this in here, it's also client revenue growth. And what I'm always doing when I'm looking at roles is there an impact on revenue and profit on the one side, or is it an impact on time?